this is a normal thing. This is a human experience, and we have no reason to be ashamed because of our anxieties. We have no reason to hide because of our anxieties, but that we can actually come freely to God and even to each other with our fear, with our stress, and our anxieties. So before we begin, I want to lead us in a time of prayer. If you're a believer, you can pray with us. If you're not a believer, you can just close your eyes and be silent. But yeah, I want to lead us in a time of silence for the next 2 minutes. And even if you're eating right now, I want to, just kind of invite you to pause, to close your eyes, and to pray. And as you are in this time of silence, I want your prayer, the thing that is going through your mind, the words that are going through your mind should be from that verse in 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him. So the next 2 minutes, time of silence, and in your mind, in your spirit, you're saying, cast all my anxiety upon you. So let's take this time in silence, and then I'll pray for us. Dear God, we come before you. We recognize our humanity. We recognize that you um, created us, and we can come before you and just present to you our anxieties, present to you our stress. And even as we come to listen to this workshop, this conversation, I pray, God, that you help us to gain the skills we need to manage the reality, just the normalcy of stress and anxiety that may come from our jobs, that might come from the things that we're juggling, and wherever they come from. God, I pray first of all that we can realize that we can bring them before you, and that we can also bring it before community, even just like this, and even learn ways for us to manage and cope with just the normal reality of stress and anxiety. So I pray you help us and give us the tools that we need, that we can utilize to become the human beings that you've called us to be. So yeah, we thank you, and we are grateful. In Jesus' name, amen. Great. Again, thank you for joining us. So excited that you can be with us here. I get the privilege to introduce to you our speakers. First of all, Dara, who's supposed to be one of the speakers here today, she could not make it because, well, she's pregnant. I don't know if you might know this, but she's pregnant, entering pre-labor. So I think it's obviously a safe thing for her not to, to kind of get that all started. But so grateful for her because she helped create this presentation, help kind of manage the whole workshop. So grateful for her. But today we have Melissa Schneider, who's part of our Hope community, has been part of our Hope community almost from the beginning. As you might know, she's a private practice owner, a therapist, a longtime therapist, seasoned speaker and trainer, who has been with us. It really has helped us with different workshops. And, she's super skilled in her field and went to school in Columbia University, got her a master's in clinical social work. She's done a lot, and we're so grateful that she's here to share with us today. So grateful for her. She's going to be sharing for most of the presentation. And then Kathy, who also a member of our church, who also is an executive director of Center for Hope and Renewal, a counseling center, obviously, that we as a church helped start. And again, she has her counseling psychology degree from Columbia University and has experience in a broad range of clinical issues. And so, yeah, she will be part of the panel at the end of the workshop. Which, by the way, if you have any questions for us, please put them in the chat. Please utilize the chat as a way to kind of talk and make your thoughts known. And let us know if you have a question, put it there in the chat and we'll address it at the end of this workshop. If you prefer for it to be private, you can obviously send it to me privately and I'll be sure to have that question answered. So without further ado, so I can stop talking, here's Melissa, who's going to share with us.
Great. Thanks so much, Craig. I'm excited to talk with you all about this really important topic that's become a big part of our lives, and probably was before the pandemic as well. Just a screen sharing question, because I'm not a Zoom aficionado. If I open the chat, are you guys like seeing the chat, or is it just like on my own screen?
It will be just on your own screen.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just keep it there so that if people are like, Melissa, what do you mean? Then I'll be able to see it.
Is there a screen? Is this, or are you playing the slideshow? Is this?
Yes, exactly. So I can like move it. It like moves, right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Good. Housekeeping issues solved, but let me know if you're not hearing anything or seeing something. We have Jason, a whiz on the back end, who can help with things, and people who know more about Zoom than me. So I'm excited to talk about this topic tonight because I think in the past 2 years, there's been a shift. I think many people were dealing with stress and anxiety before the pandemic, but it feels like now it's just become something that people are more open about. So you might have like met friends or heard of family members or even personally been going through just an increase in stress and anxiety. And I think a beautiful thing about communities talking more about this is then you can actually get down to like, so what do we also do about it? What works? How can we be feeling better day to day? How can we help each other? And so I think this is really timely. And I wanted to just, I think we already did the workshop introduction, but I wanted to just ask folks, when you think about what is stress or what is anxiety, how do you sort of define these things? Do you see a difference between the two words? And if you were to be like, I'm so stressed, like what is it that happens for you that helps you know that? So if anyone wants to kind of share in the chat box, just like, the little cues for you that let you know, okay, this is a stressful week, or this thing coming up really has me worried. So feel free to share that, and I'll just be taking a look over there and sharing those over the next slide or two. So what is stress? You've probably seen a bell curve like this before, but basically stress is our body's response to feeling stimulated. It's our nervous system beginning to kind of wake up for the day. It's sort of the opposite of being asleep. So if you're familiar with words like adrenaline or cortisol, When you start to wake up in the morning, your body actually wakes you up by like starting to raise your cortisol levels. It's one of our stress hormones. So it helps you feel that it's worthwhile to rise from your bed and begin your day. A lot of us feel like pretty tired in the morning. We might need some coffee, that sort of thing. And then, throughout the day, people have a kind of like patterned way that their body, might like kind of put out a little more of a stress hormone to like get you going to work. If you have something going on, like a meeting or a talk or something, you might be like feeling even more. And then if there's something big on your plate that day, like a test or a meeting with your boss or like a date or something, you might be feeling like really amped up. But stress, for the most part, it is meant to be a good thing, right? It's like if you had absolutely zero anxiety, like you wouldn't go to work or apply to school or like try to do anything, right? Because you'd just be like 100% zen. So I always like to just point out that like the goal is not to have zero stress and anxiety, right? The goal is just to have like a helpful amount. And so what this bell curve points out here is that there's sort of like a sweet spot in the middle. That actually like you do your best at school, you have your best ideas, you do your best writing, you do your best work when you have like a low to moderate amount of stress going on as opposed to no stress. So that's just helpful to kind of think about. One definition of stress that I like a lot is when your understanding of what is expected of you is higher than what you think you can deliver, right? So you're seeing something coming. Stress is usually about what's happening in the future. So you're seeing something coming and you're thinking, I don't know if I can do that. And that could be a little, I don't know if I can do that, or like a huge, I don't know if I can do that. And that's usually where stress comes from. So we're not stressed about stuff that we just know how to do and is fine, right? We're stressed about stuff with kind of a question mark. But stress is different than anxiety. So I want to share a little bit about this. So anxiety can be induced by stress or medication or other things, but anxiety is physiological. So this is our body beginning to go into fight, flight, or freeze. You might have heard of these terms before, but this is like basically like a big surge of adrenaline and cortisol. And this again can be appropriate, right? If a tiger is trying to get you, or you just got a scary letter from the IRS or something, your body wants you to be like, don't miss this one, save yourself. But for the most part in the modern world, like this system response is not very helpful. Because it was sort of made to save us, in caveman times, right? It was like super useful to like leap over ravines or like, rescue a child from like a river or something. Your body just like shut down all the other stuff and you went into go mode. You could run a mile, like, you've heard of people like lifting a car in like a crisis, that kind of thing. Super helpful in like a physical world where the solution to problems was a physical one. But that's not the world we live in. Our problems usually require like staying calm, processing complex information, communicating effectively, and like remaining calm even when other people are doing things that bother us. And so our anxiety system is not built for the world that we live in, and that's why it can be pretty difficult. So just a note on fight, flight, or freeze, if that's not something you have heard much about before. We used to just talk about fight or flight. Like if something like provokes you, you're either like, I need to get out of this room, or you're like kind of getting into a fight with the person. But more research lately has brought out like a third type that's more of a freeze. And so this is the person who like sees the car coming down the street and they're just like, it's not like helpful, the car is going to hit them, right? But they like their body isn't inclined to action, it's inclined to like shut down. And particularly if you've experienced trauma, and or it can just be your own wiring, you might be more of like a freeze. And so you're not getting into a fight or leaving the room, you're just like frozen. And there is even talk of a fourth type, but I won't belabor you. But so this is like happening in your body. And so people are often like, particularly with anything that has kind of a mental health label, people tend to think, oh, I should be like stronger than this. This is like just in my head, that sort of thing. But anxiety is not. It is like happening in your body as well as in your mind. And it tends to be kind of a synchronicity of an idea that like, I'm worried about something scary, something bad will happen. Then your body like tenses so that you can leap over the ravine in caveman time, and your cortisol comes out, and then your brain is like, wait a minute, this must really be bad because I'm really not feeling good here. And then your body kind of keeps going and going. There are actually 6 different kinds of anxiety. If you want to talk in more like kind of clinical therapy world terms, but I do think they're helpful just to put out there because there's a lot of like shows and, people hear different terms. So generalized anxiety disorder is like kind of the common worry wart, someone who like throughout their life over a long term just has like a low level, like what if kind of worst case scenario planning. This is the person who like really wants to make sure they have, 6 to 12 months of savings and that they, they're like preparing for medical situations. They're thinking about, traffic commutes, like they tend to be a little more oriented toward the things that they worry about. And you would know if this was you, like this is something you'd have dealt with for like 20 years. Then you have stress-induced anxiety. And this is something that I think has just dramatically spiked during the pandemic, right? That you were maybe like chugging along before, and now you're like, oh my gosh, like if I go to the grocery store, am I going to get COVID or like, harm a family member? Like there's like these bigger things that are kind of weighing on people. And stress-induced anxiety can just come and go in like seasons. It could be like preparing for an exam. It could be like issues at work. It could be a relationship problem. But it might lift and you might go back to what you might call your set point. Then there's panic disorder. And this is when you have panic attacks. And this is just sort of a lottery of your biology. But this is like your body, when there's a lot of anxiety, might turn it into a panic attack, which is like a very intense and extreme experience of anxiety that lasts like 1 to 30 minutes. And people might literally like go to the ER thinking they're having a heart attack, or they might feel concerned that they're like dying or going crazy. So panic attacks are like a pretty extreme expression of anxiety, and some people like never have one, and some people like their body just makes them. And so that's just another one to know about. There's social anxiety, and that's where you're like, you're not really worried about like trains or the future or things like that, but you're worried about like, how am I going to do like at this party, or meeting a new person, or having to talk at work. People might feel a little overly like the worries that they have are more about social interactions, and people may be thinking that, they seem foolish or they said the wrong thing or something like that. Then the last one you have is medical condition induced anxiety. And this is one people don't always know about. So this can happen like after pregnancy or delivery. This can happen from taking a new medication, drinking too much coffee. It could be from things like thyroid conditions, heart arrhythmia, mitral valve prolapse, PMS, alcoholism, just like inputs in our body, just being on like too much of a medication for something totally unrelated to anxiety could just be like raising your body's like production of stress over time. And sometimes people are just not even like thinking of that. And so that's another one just to know about. So maybe another question for the group. And let me see here. Okay, so somebody said in talking about stress, that stress is the first level, and then anxiety is where it becomes unbearable. That's a good definition. They're certainly related situations. Maybe another question for the group. I'm curious, how many people know a friend or loved one who has experienced an increase in stress symptoms during the pandemic? Maybe related to the pandemic or related to changes from the pandemic. Feel free to share if that's something that you have experienced or noticed, and I'll read out your responses as we go through. You might not be surprised to hear that during the pandemic, anxiety diagnoses and screenings have gone up tremendously, 650% actually. And so, as a nation, we are just feeling a sort of unprecedented level of stress and anxiety, not just because of health fears, though certainly that's like a big one, but all the trigger effects of the pandemic, like how's my industry, how's the housing market, what's happening in our country, public violence against certain groups, just a lot of like troubling and disturbing events, financial strain, an election. And so something to kind of know about stress and anxiety is that just living during a year when a lot of stressful things happen, it just builds up, right? Like you might be someone who doesn't have anxiety problems, but if you like move and have a relationship thing happen, have a work change, and even something like getting married, having a baby, things that you might be excited about, they just pile up. And so we've just had more of that kind of thing happening. So there's like a little picture here, but things that probably won't be very surprising, right? That 1 in 5 adults say that they feel that their mental health has worsened over the course of the pandemic. With my little chat box, I can read this one to you. People feel worried about where our country is going, and people just feeling like COVID itself is a significant stressor, is something that is just increasing a lot. Yeah, so a couple of people said like, yes, too many people to count. Yes, this has happened. Certainly have noticed, just like rising stress levels among friends and loved ones, and even among ourselves. And so, I think it's a good time to, within our community, just to be a little more like gentle with ourselves. And we're going to talk about coping. But it's, I think the words you used, Craig, about it being almost like a wartime, that's an image that comes to my mind often, that you're not, at least in my lifetime, there haven't been many seasons where the feeling on the ground was like, wow, most people are adversely affected by this like huge thing that's happening, that is sort of out of everyone's control. And that just creates like a back burner thing on top of regular life, which is hard enough, right? So a couple of interesting studies. In 2020, more than 500,000 people experienced symptoms of anxiety or depression. And this was the same study that found the like 650% increase in the screenings. Another 2020 study showed 8 in 10 adults saying that the pandemic was a significant source of stress. And then 2 out of 3 adults, or 2/3, said that they had experienced increased stress over the course of the pandemic. And that was like a year ago that those studies were done. So there's just a lot going on, right? This could be having, it could be having like a negative effect on our lives. And it's probably a season when it would help all of us to just be a little more mindful about our own care on this front. And even the little thing that we did at the beginning, just having 2 minutes of silence. Like I'm just always surprised by how much I can notice my body calming down with 2 minutes of silence, just like having your face relax, taking some deep breaths, just like being in the moment. So there are so many things that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But I wanted to begin with a quiz, because who doesn't love quizzes? So I'm gonna give you guys the GAD-7, which is just like a standard anxiety score. And so if you have a piece of paper or your phone, I'm gonna ask 7 questions, and you can rate yourself if you want to. It's optional, but it's just like kind of helpful to hear some of the symptoms. And then I'll tell you what your score means at the end. So you can number your paper 1 to 7, and then the like response options are 0 for not at all, 1 for several days, 2 for more than half the days, and this is kind of looking back over a 2-week period, or 3 for nearly every day. And so I'll remind you of that a couple of times. But so the first item is, have you been feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge in the past 2 weeks? And you could give yourself 0 for not at all, 1 for several days, 2 for more than 7 days, and 3 for like, upwards of 11, 12 days. Oh, very smart, Craig. There you go. Craig put in the chat the scoring. Okay, so item 1, feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge. Item 2, not being able to stop or control worrying. Not being able to stop or control worrying. So you can score yourself on that one. Thank you for writing it down. Question number 3, worrying too much about different things. Worrying too much about different things. Number 4, trouble relaxing. It's an easy one, trouble relaxing. Number 5, being so restless that it's hard to sit still. Being so restless that it's hard to sit still. Number 6, becoming easily annoyed or irritable. Number 7, Last one here, feeling afraid as if something awful might happen. Okay. So add up your score if you have some numbers in this little quiz. And the way the scoring works on this quiz is there are cutoffs. If you have a score of 5 to 9, it might be mild anxiety. 10 to 14 is moderate, and 15 and up is more severe anxiety. And this is obviously just a quick screening tool. But the recommendation here is, if you're kind of around 5 to 10, that you might want to be doing some just increased self-care. If you are over 10, it could be worth, having a further evaluation with your doctor, with a therapist, with someone who could be helpful. Particularly with something like anxiety, your body kind of gets into a groove, sort of like how if you meditate every day, they've done these interesting fMRI brain scans where your brain goes into this like blue ball. If every day you're kind of practicing a high level of anxiety, your body gets good at making that too. And this is a pretty treatable thing. So just wanted to share that little quiz so you could think a little bit about how you're doing right now. A little quote from Charles Spurgeon: "Anxiety does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows. It only empties today of its strength." It's pretty good for Dr. Spurgeon. Okay, so enough about anxiety, which we know about. Let's talk about kind of what the options are. So whenever I have a client with anxiety in my therapy practice, I feel sort of excited for them because anxiety is so treatable, which is not to say it's easy to treat or that like they'll just be gone in a week. But this is like, of all the mental health conditions that people might be facing, this is the one that like, we understand this one. It's very straightforward in the body. The nervous system overacts. It like puts out adrenaline and cortisol when it's not needed. And the whole practice of reducing anxiety is just to help your body put it back, just reshelve it, reabsorb, stop overproducing it. As opposed to something like depression or bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, things that are a lot more like mercurial and can be harder to manage. Anxiety is something that you can reverse engineer pretty manually. There's also very effective medications for it because, again, it's just a simple system. We just like lower the cortisol level, just put like a ceiling on it and you feel better. And so that's kind of exciting. So I definitely wanted to just put that out there, right? That, you don't need to live with something like panic attacks or significantly disrupted sleep or, dread every day. That just means your body is making way too much stress, and that is something that you can treat. But so maybe another question for folks: what have you tried in your life? If you were feeling like I just need to take a little bit better care of myself, or what have you heard of other people trying that you thought was interesting? There's a lot of sort of popularity around things like mindfulness or meditation or yoga, but I'm wondering when you think about like, if I want to manage my own stress, what do you kind of go to? Maybe you can share that in the chat as well. That's a good point. So somebody shared that sometimes it feels like anxiety might kind of like turn into depression or like kind of like calm down into depression, if that makes sense. And that for sure happens. Depression, like I was mentioning, is just there's a lot going on in the brain to create depression. So it's not something that is as well understood. But anxiety and depression go hand in hand. Antidepressant medications treat anxiety and depression. And so they're for sure interrelated. And just being in a lot of anxiety can also kind of it can lead to depression as well. Certainly linked. Ooh, we got a lot of good stuff here. So people shared exercise, personal retreats, lots of exercise. Good. That's a really big one. Jiu-jitsu. Oh, that's cool. Spending time outdoors, yoga, running, journaling, therapy, medication, dance, walking, talking to someone I trust, knowing I'll be heard, going outside. Being outdoors. This is a really big one, certainly in the pandemic. Ooh, tub soaking with instrumental music. Yes, please. Good bubble bath, sunlight. Yes, I feel like some of these answers really resonate in the pandemic, right? Bible meditation, of course, exercise, massage. Yeah, so this is great, guys. This is a very good list. Here, in fact, well, this is a short one, and then we'll go to the list. But I found this sort of cheering that even in the midst of a pretty difficult time in our country, still 6 out of 10 people feel hopeful about their future. Or is it 7 out of 10? Sorry, the chat is in my way here. Yeah, there we go. It's even better. 7 out of 10. But I really just think that kind of speaks to the human spirit. And I think particularly in a faith community, we might have more just robust ideas or philosophy around hope. That we believe in a higher power, and we think there's a reason to have hope. We also have prayer, right, which is something that can kind of be used in situations that could even feel hopeless. So I think that's just good to remember that there's also quite a lot of resilience in us as people, even in a hard time. So you guys already listed like so many of these things. So when you're thinking about treating anxiety or stress, you kind of have a scale, right? If you're dealing with like mild to like lower, moderate, if you were scoring like, 5 to 11, something like that, then doing something like deep breathing or journaling or exercise, seeing friends, getting your sleep better organized, all of that stuff can just help so much. What I wanted to maybe do for a minute here, and I'd love to hear from the group, if there's anything on this list that you're like, what is that? Or that you just want to hear a little bit more about, maybe put that in. And I was going to talk through a couple of these that might be a little less, might be just a little less familiar. So I think most people are familiar with deep breathing, and we're going to do a deep breathing exercise in just a couple minutes. Progressive muscle relaxation, you've probably also heard of. But I wanted to talk a little bit about guided imagery, because this is something I hadn't heard of before, like therapy school. So this is similar to deep breathing, but it sort of speaks to the person who might be a little more visually oriented. If you're someone who like loves a well-designed room, or like a beautiful field, or like being at the ocean just like immediately soothes you, that sort of thing, this could be something to try. And basically guided imagery is just like being in a relaxed state. You might even be doing deep breathing, but you're sort of intentionally bringing your imagination to a place that you love and that brings comfort. Or you might even just be watching on a screen like a soothing scene. So people kind of, usually when you ask people, something springs right to mind, like my reading nook at my house in 4th grade, or like grandma's kitchen, or my favorite beach, or something like that. And so our imagination is an interesting thing. When we remember something, our body believes that we're there and like responds accordingly. And so, if you spend a few minutes like deeply visualizing yourself in like a hammock, on like your favorite vacation, like you'll just feel your body sort of calming down. So if you're kind of a more visual oriented person, this could be something to check out. And this is like just like free all over the internet. Look up like guided imagery with oceans, or something like that, and you'll find things. Another one I wanted to point out here is something called grounding. And this is just like a short little technique. Oh, good. And someone said, what is grounding? Right. So good. We'll talk about that. So grounding, this will be really simple once I explain it, is basically just like remembering where you are in the moment. And it's sort of a method of bringing yourself back into the present. So one like really simple grounding technique is like, what are 5 things I see? What are 4 things I hear? What are 3 things I smell? What are 2 things I'm touching? I'm forgetting our last sense, but you know what I mean? So like in where I am right now, like if I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, how is this talk going? Like, Kathy's going to tell me I said something wrong. I'm just kidding, but like you could be in some like stressed out state. You're not really here, right? You're in some like future moment. And so instead you could ground yourself by being like, okay, I see a lamp, I see a plant, I see my nice orange couch that I like. I hear people walking by on the street. I hear the heater popping. I feel my like nice work chair. I feel my sock feet with my slippers on. And it's just like the act of really intentionally being in the moment. And just that practice can just like lower your heart rate a little bit if you're feeling kind of like amped up. I also like to remember with grounding that almost always right now is fine. We spend so much time worrying about like a 12-minute event in 5 weeks or something, right? And like we'll spend 5 weeks worrying about it for like 12 minutes. And that's a lot of our life with stress and anxiety. And so I think it's just nice to remember like Thursday night going okay. People asked about sleep hygiene. So I have a slide on that next because I thought that was worth going into even a little bit more. Let's see, what is grounding? Oh, someone says they teach their elementary students to do that. I have to say, I've been like so impressed and just like delighted over the course of the pandemic just to see how much like simple relaxation tools are being taught to kids, because I feel like quite confident that did not happen when any of us were growing up, but I've just heard so many things, like stories of people teaching like refugee kids, like how to do deep breathing, kids coming home with like, even like our pre-K 4 intro class, they read a book about Elmo doing like belly breaths, and like it's kind of amazing to grow up with these simple tools to help you just lower your stress like manually in the moment. Okay, so grounding is another one. Challenging thoughts, this is probably not super clear from the bullet there, but this basically means challenging your thoughts, not like having challenging thoughts, but sort of like putting your thought on trial. Like, okay, anxiety. So you're telling me like I'm going to be embarrassed at this party. Maybe a party is a bad example in the pandemic, but like we'll just run with it for a moment, right? Like you're telling me I'm going to be in the corner. I'm not going to know what to say. No one's going to want to talk to me. I'll want to leave after 4 minutes. Let's just put that one on trial for a minute. Has that happened at every party in my life? No. Are there things I could do to have that not happen? Like go with a friend or plan 3 interesting questions to ask people, or, go like late or early to make myself more comfortable. Maybe, have I experienced interactions with new people where they thought I was charming or interesting or great? Yes. And so that's sort of the idea with challenging your thoughts, right? That anxiety is usually talking to us about like the worst possible outcome and just making it sound like that's what's going to happen. Another thing that you can do with challenging your thoughts is kind of trying to notice 2 other possibilities. So usually anxiety is like a worst case scenario, but you could be saying, okay, what's a best case scenario? Like I could go to this party and like meet a new friend, right? I mean, that would be awesome. I could, what's a medium scenario? Right? I could go to this party, I could have like great cheese from Van Hook, like bonus, so you can just sort of remind yourself that like, it's not like it's always the bad thing that happens, right? Sometimes like I'm pleasantly surprised by life, or something just like normal and good happens. And you'll notice if you kind of say those different scenarios out loud that like the like whir in your head kind of like slows. Let's see, somebody said, yes, about I know kids, right? I love it. I think if you grow up knowing that stuff, maybe you'll have less anxiety. Like I think that could really happen. Let me also say a short thing about medication. So maybe 0 times in my like whatever it is, 13 years in the field, that I've said to someone like, you might want to see your doctor and like talk about meds. Like 0 times has anyone been like, Melissa, that's awesome, I would love to get on meds. Like every single person is always like, I don't want to take meds. I don't want to have to depend on something. What if I get addicted? Like meds are wrong. I should be strong. I shouldn't need them. So I just want to share that particularly with anxiety, medication is super helpful when it's indicated and appropriate. I would also back up to say, like going to see your doctor does not mean you have to take anything. It can take like 4 weeks to get an appointment and like a while to see someone that you like it can just be a long road. So I usually say to people, if you're like anywhere in moderate anxiety plus, like get an appointment with a psychiatrist, talk to them, do an intake, let them ask you their questions, and then ask them your questions. Like, I've heard bad things about Klonopin or Ativan or Xanax, or, like, is this going to be a problem for me? What's going to happen if I do this or that? And just educate yourself, leave with a prescription if they give you one, and then you can decide, right? You could fill it like later. You don't have to do it right now. What I would say about anxiety medication in particular, though, like let's say that you're someone who struggles with public speaking, for example, right? There's like an event or like a work meeting or something coming up, and that's just like, you know, that as soon as you step up, like your heart is going to be racing, the blood's pounding in your ears, that kind of thing. If you have a medication that you can take, and people do this, it's a public speaking trick, you can just take something that like keeps your heart rate below a certain rate. And so you go into the same exact normally stress-inducing situation, and your heart rate is just like here, you know, and so your brain might still be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to say the wrong thing, but it's not the same like where you can barely speak and you're trembling. And so that like relates to so many situations with anxiety, so that sometimes medication can actually be part of a cure where your body gets to have a different experience in the anxiety-inducing situation, like for a few weeks or a few months, and then your body might just be able to take over, being like, okay, yeah, we've decided that situation is not so scary anymore. Particularly with something like disrupted sleep, you know, if you've done a lot of good things to manage your sleep, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but it is just not working. There are pretty strong correlations between really disrupted sleep and developing depression and serious anxiety. Like the sleep kind of like, you know, we used to think of it as like a chicken and an egg with the other things coming first, but sleep can come first too. So all that to say, everyone would prefer to be able to manage anxiety with like exercise and good coping skills and some nice deep breathing. And that's always the first line of action. But if that is just not working, it does not hurt to educate yourself and just kind of find out more about medication, because it's like just stuff that you take as needed as well for anxiety, which can be good. Okay, any other coping skills questions? Feel free to throw these out here. So I want to talk a little more about sleep hygiene, like I mentioned, because sleep is so important. I'm someone who struggles with disrupted sleep, and the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. So basically, the thing that I thought was just really fascinating. So you've probably heard about stages of sleep and REM and all that good stuff. So there are 5 stages of sleep, and throughout the night, in the beginning, you know, you kind of go through certain stages a little bit longer, and the last 2 stages are kind of quick, you know, and then your body kind of goes to the next cycle, the next cycle, the next cycle. And it's not till the end that your body spends like a lot of time in stage 4 and 5. And those 2 stages are where your body does like the non-critical stuff, like restoring your emotional neurotransmitters, you know, resheathing your myelin sheaths in your brain, like things that kind of help you function as a normal sort of mentally well person. And so that's why, like, if you are even sleeping an hour or 2 less, you're missing like that kind of like really big like pay dirt on like your emotional health. And so I always think of that as like a big motivator for figuring out your sleep. You know, that if you can go from getting 6 hours a night to getting like 7 or 8, it's just huge. And so just a couple things to think about with sleep hygiene. You may have heard this because people are talking more about it, which is good. You know, they've really found that going to bed and waking up at the same time, you know, as opposed to like sleeping in on the weekends or having like really big swings when football games are on or that sort of thing, it makes a big difference. And, you know, as many parents might have noticed, because your kids just get up at the same time every single day, for me, at least, it was the first time in life that I'd ever gone to bed at the same time and woken up at the same time, like pretty much every day. And it's good for your sleep. Your body's like, all right, it's 10:30, it's time to get drowsy, as opposed to not really having that cue. You also really want to think about using your bed just for sleeping. So if you're used to like being on your laptop or like, you know, even things like watching a screen or reading that might feel like relaxing, it's still like something else happening in bed. And you want to train your body, like when we get in here, we sleep. And so that's something to think about too. Like maybe you just want to get like a cozy reading chair in your room, and then you kind of like get into bed when you're ready. You also want to avoid any blue light screens for like 2 hours before bed. They just like tell your brain it's daytime. And again, those like cortisol levels, like during the daytime, like we need to be up, we need to be active. We can't be like falling asleep at 1 o'clock when we're supposed to be in a meeting. So our body is just making more cortisol. And so if you're watching a blue screen at night, you're telling your body to keep doing that. You want to avoid working out like in the evening. You know, I feel like everyone's always offering like 7:30 and 8 o'clock classes. And I'm like, who can go to those and go to bed at 10:30 like me? You know, it depends on your day, but you want to have like a good 3 or 4 hours after your workout is over before you're supposed to be sleeping. So that's something to think about. And then just having a nice like routine at night, something soothing, listening to the music you like, having the lights dim, maybe you drink some tea, something like that that isn't a screen. And then the last thing, this bit of advice, every person I ever ask about tells me this, and I've not been able to pull it off, but I would like to share it with you. That if you're in bed and just not sleeping, the recommendation is to get out of bed so that you're not spending time in bed, like just not sleeping for 4 hours. The idea is like, go to your living room, read a book in like dim light, something boring. And then when you get sleepy, go back to bed. I find this hard because I'm like too sleepy to want to get out of bed, but I'm not asleep. But the occasional time that I've been like, okay, just do the advice. It does actually work. Like you'll get back to sleep within like 30 minutes instead of a long time. Questions about sleep hygiene, feel free to put those in the chat. This is just, again, like so huge. Whenever I'm talking to a client with disrupted sleep, I really tell them like, we can let this go like 3 or 4 more weeks. You can try some things, but if it is not getting better, please see your doctor. It is just so detrimental to your health to have like 4 hours of sleep intermittently and to be like, oh no, what's going to happen again tonight? So don't do that to yourself. Okay, deep breathing. So I wanted to share a couple of different techniques because I feel like really the big takeaway with anxiety stuff in general is like, just try a bunch of different stuff. Sometimes you find the thing that you're like, man, that really worked for me. And so that's why we want to just expose you to some different ideas here. So the first one is called the breathing square technique. So if you like to, if you're kind of a tactile person, just grab a piece of paper, draw yourself a 4-sided square and put like breathing or B or something like that in the middle. Otherwise, you can just look at the square on this screen. And I'm just going to walk you through a deep breathing exercise, and then I'll kind of move into the other ones there. Okay, so before we even start, sit in a comfy position, roll your shoulders, roll your neck, just get in like you're alert, but you're not like at attention. Uncross your legs or your feet if any like clothing is tight, just like adjust so that you're kind of cozy. You can close your eyes, or you can just sort of cast your gaze downward. Okay, and so as you start to breathe a little deeper, I want you to think about starting at the bottom corner of that square. And I want you to breathe in for 4 counts. So that would just be like breathing in like 1, 2, 3, 4. Then breathe out slowly as you imagine going across the top of the square. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I'll count it out as you're going around the sides. So now exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale across the bottom, 2, 3, 4. Just try that on your own for a cycle. I'll just count it out in my own head. So keep going around the square as you're doing that, and just kind of let your gaze like lazily go around. And as you're breathing, try to hear your exhale and your inhale, kind of like that good yoga breath where it sounds a bit like the ocean in the back of your throat. And if you feel kind of loose as you're doing that, maybe you can also expand your belly so that you're breathing in and making your stomach fill up as well as just your upper chest. So do just like one more square and see if you notice any changes in your body. If you can feel your heart slowing, or if you yawn, or you just feel a little more relaxed. Now I want to try a couple of other ones. So keep breathing and kind of noticing your breath. But this time, I want you to try to fill up until you feel full. And so you could call this the full balloon. So just do like a nice big inhale and just kind of notice your lungs stretching, stretching, stretching. And then you can breathe out in whatever way feels comfortable. And then breathe back in and fill the balloon kind of slowly if you can. Just like this, like. And then breathe out. And then you want to notice each time you breathe in, you can probably feel it a little bit more. You know, that your lungs are a muscle like anything else in your body, and they start to stretch out when you really do a nice deep breath. So do a few more of those. And again, if you can get your belly involved, that actually lets you breathe in a lot more oxygen, and it's much more soothing. You could even put your hands on your belly. Just notice what that feels like. Some people like to pause for like a second or two at the top of the balloon. Sometimes they feel kind of like a heat rush when they breathe back out again, and that can feel nice. Okay, so I want you to, as we move into this next and last one, just be noticing your body. You know, some people start to be more aware of their heartbeat. They might be more aware of even feeling some tension in a certain place. Maybe you can kind of roll that out a little bit. You can like rub your eyes, you know, anything that just feels comfortable. And then this last one, what we're going to do is a pretty simple idea of just noticing your exhale and really focusing there. So you'll still take a nice inhale, just whatever feels comfortable. Maybe you're nice and stretched out after the full balloon, and then just take a nice long exhale. You know, see if you can exhale like, you know, a few more counts than your inhale. And now see if you can breathe in, you know, let's say you're breathing in for 4 counts, see if you can exhale for 8. You can just double it. So keep noticing that. Try to do all your breathing through your nose if possible, but if you need to use your mouth, it's okay. And the beauty of a long exhale is this is one of those other like reverse engineering things where we never like flop onto the couch and say like, like right before a performance evaluation, right? Like we're kind of like, yeah. You know, so like long exhales, that's our body's way of being like, it's over. I did it. The day is done. You know, now I get to be comfortable. You know, if you ever kind of like hang up the phone and just go like, oh, you know, or something like that, that's like just a natural response to like the stress is finished. And so using a long exhale is just like a trick that you can use anytime, to again, just tell your body, we can just reabsorb all that adrenaline and cortisol. I don't need it right now. So I also put a little link in here, and I think I put it in the resource page too. But let me see if I can, okay, why not? I'll show you this little book. So it basically just like walks you through some other things, progressive relaxation, you know, just some other tips. So feel free to take a look at that. And I'm going to try to get myself back to the presentation. But if someone is able to put the link in the chat box, that might be good. Otherwise, I think I can get it out of the last slide. Okay, so that was our breathing. So I'm gonna invite Kathy to join me on our virtual stage here. And I think Craig is gonna share a couple of questions that had come in from the registration process. And so the idea of the panel is we just want you to be able to ask like anything you wanna know from people who are working in the therapy field and kind of helping people with anxiety, or just anything you wanna know about how we're taking that into our own real lives.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. Yep, Jason just posted the relaxation booklet, so you can click on that, use that as you wish. But yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat, or you can also private message me as well. And maybe any questions around what Melissa shared, or around anything or any other questions you may have. So I will begin with the questions that we have right now. Again, thanks, Melissa, for that presentation. For you personally, what are your go-to anxiety and stress management resources that you give to your clients, for example?
So I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
So when I work with my clients, I try to educate them on how anxiety, a lot of anxiety can kind of come from the perception that you don't have control and the feeling of helplessness. So something I encourage pretty much all my clients with anxiety to do is to create a really, really firm and strict boundary and structure for yourself. So, I think during the pandemic, all of us kind of got confined to our homes. We're working in our bedrooms. It's just not a healthy lifestyle that a lot of us has adopted. So I encouraged a lot of my clients to set a wake up time and literally plan out what happens next until you get to your desk to work. So that means take a shower, get out of the shower, you brew a cup of coffee, you take 10 minutes to just enjoy that cup of coffee. So whatever that routine looks like, and stick to it. And a lot of them have reported that it helps with their anxiety and stress because you have something to look forward to. And there's also that perception of, I do have control over what happens in my day. And obviously I always just encourage a lot of physical activity, schedule in that physical activity, sign up for that yoga class and go to it. No compromising on that. Do whatever you can to try to make it there. Something I also tell a lot of clients to do is try to incorporate a lot of self check-ins. And this is actually something I do a lot throughout my day, where I will just take 2 minutes just out of just while I'm doing something, I'm taking 2 minutes and I'm asking myself, how am I doing? How am I feeling right now? And I just answer that question to myself. And if the answer is I'm not doing so great, then I plan my next step. Does that mean I just step out of my office and just take a walk around the house? Do I just go drink a cup of cold water to just kind of reset myself? But I personally have found, and a lot of clients have also reported that, just kind of doing a lot of check-ins with yourself tends to be helpful.
That's great. I mean, that's, I think for me, that speaks so much to kind of like the culture we have, that we become accustomed to the, late night Netflix watching, the phones in the bed, even like Melissa talked about. Like we definitely have a culture where, our screens are just kind of like all over our lives, kind of in control of our lives in many ways. So I don't know, for Melissa, what is that like for you as well? Like as you talk to your clients and living in such a such a world where our phones are pretty much part of our every minute, kind of lives.
Totally. That's a good question. And are you saying that in relation to the first question, just kind of like
in relation to the first question? Yep.
Got you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I definitely talk with people a lot about particularly some people don't seem to be as affected by their phones, or maybe they don't think that they are, but a lot of people can really relate to, like, if I'm apart from my phone, it feels weird, like I'm just like mentally like checking for it every 3 or 4 minutes. And so if that's something you relate to, and if the phone also, like for me, if the phone is on, it just feels like I'm available in like a way that I don't have enough control over. And so for me, I just get a lot of benefit out of like full phone detoxes. Like I'll turn it off for like 7 hours on a Sunday, and just like I literally like put it in a drawer, like good night phone, goodbye, I'll see you later, and it can feel very freeing. And then kind of like we were saying earlier with the sleep hygiene, really thinking about at least the last hour of the day not using a phone, like read a real book, or like do drawing, or just something else, right? Do some stretching, do your warm shower, then that kind of thing. And I think other go-to stuff for stress and anxiety, like I really like to help people think about just adding more good stuff in. So kind of even like Kathy was talking about with your, if you're just working at your house, like the day might not have enough bright spots, so really thinking like, okay, I'm going to actually leave, walk to Hybrid Coffee, like get something I'm excited to drink and like come back. I'm going to like, try to see a friend, just like to really intentionally build in the joy, because the other stuff like has to happen. You'll get to your email, you'll get to your whatever it is that's already part of your day. But I feel like if you have a little bit of energy to put toward like brightening your day, that can just also lower the stress a lot, in addition to everything else that we talked about.
Great. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Kathy and Melissa. Another question someone has on the chat. How can we get through, this is a question, how can we get through fleeting negative thoughts when we are experiencing anxiety?
So something that I like to educate clients on is, I don't know if anybody has heard about the pink elephant in the room. I think it's important to acknowledge your anxiety. I think if you try to ignore it, so if I tell you, don't look at the big, huge elephant in the room, just don't look at it. I think human nature kicks in and you want to look at it. It's so tempting. And if you don't look at it, or you try to tell yourself not to look at it, that urge to look at that pink elephant is going to grow. So what I tell clients is don't ignore it, don't avoid it, lean into it, acknowledge it, talk to it. And kind of like what Melissa was saying earlier, talk to it, right? So, hey, anxiety, you're here. This is completely irrational, right? Because anxiety is irrational. So acknowledging that you're not welcome here, you're not helping me, you're irrational. And I think even in some extreme cases like myself, if I am experiencing a lot of anxiety, which I do have a ton of, there are moments where I'll literally in my head curse it out and say, you're not welcome here, scream at it, yell at it, and then pretty much scare it off, right? So I tell clients, don't try to avoid it, because that feeling of anxiety is only going to grow. It's kind of, I try to explain it in the way where you're just making the monster angrier.
That's a really good visual. Yeah. And that was making me think, Kathy, like for, not all of my clients have a faith background, but when clients do, it's always really noticeable for me in my own head, to like invite God to tell me if the thought seems reasonable, and it's almost like you can feel in your head that you're kind of dragging it from one area of reality to another. And so it just reminds me that it's like, wow, that is so not God's truth about this moment. Even if this thing coming up is scary, like it just feels like God would always say something else, like I can give you courage, we can do this, like, you have the skills you need to get through this. And so I definitely like to think a lot about like the actual thoughts and feelings, and to really try to kind of like you're saying as well, Kathy, to just notice that like this is not the truth, and I wouldn't say this to a friend or a child or anyone that I like. So why am I saying it to myself? And that can really help. And then just making sure like that you've got like time to go take a walk or do a workout. Really, you can't say enough about vigorous exercise to get rid of stress, because that's how we're built, right? We're supposed to go and like run a mile to get away from the jaguar, and so if you can do a workout, then you've like done what the system is asking of you.
Good. It also kind of reminds me of 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5, pretty much this is what it says. It says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So I've used that as a prayer, like 2 Corinthians 10:5. It's just like I'm capturing every thought that is not of God, and I am making sure that it's turned towards the truth. So making it captive, and obedient to Christ. So I think in many ways, I feel like that is such a great way to just manage those anxieties and those lies that almost come to our minds that make us feel insecure or belittle us, whatever that might be. So that's good and very helpful. Thank you for sharing that, guys. Jay is asking, are there any relaxation resources available that are geared towards kids, geared towards children?
I don't work with kids, but I can share things that have just come across our plate for our own kids. I think it's actually like a great time to be looking for kid resources. Like, kind of like I was sharing, like there's an Elmo book about deep breathing. And there's just a lot of stuff like that. People, I think, give us this because they're like, you're a therapist, you'll love this, but there's just, there are books like we just got one called The Feelings Ninja, so it's a book that kind of like educates kids about emotion and feeling and like the range, anger and shame and fear and sadness and happiness and joy and all that sort of stuff. And so I think just like looking for resources like that can be really important. But I think like the hugest thing for kids is like parents tend to be like, I don't want to like, tell my kids about like sad or disappointing or hard or scary things. And so we just sort of leave that out. And so kids grow up thinking the world is like generally fine and that like their parents didn't have problems, that sort of thing. And so in our own home, we try to make a point to share like age appropriate things about like the range of normal life, just saying something like, hey, today I had a difficult talk with someone at work and we're trying to sort something out, or we're worried about a problem with our thing that's coming up, and and kind of like sharing with them how we might handle it, not like freaking them out, but just making it like normal, normal to know that like parents are also stressed or anxious or might be afraid of things or might feel embarrassed about something. But yeah, I think there's a lot of like great just books to read, if your kids are into that, or even shows to watch.
Yeah, Jay, I can send you some resources that I use with some of the kids that I work with. But I definitely second what Melissa's saying. The books are very helpful. I think kind of jumping off a little bit more of what Melissa said, I think parents are the children's models, right? So we have to model what we want to see our children become. So, I think personally, just even for my 3-year-old, when she's having a tantrum, she's having a hard time regulating herself. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I lose it too, but most of the times I do try my best to just show her, just with my actions, with my body language, that I'm staying calm. I'm making it very obvious that I am using box breathing and I'm using calm tones. And naturally, kids will pick that up and start to use it themselves. Like mommy and daddy used it, so it must be helpful. I'm going to do it too. And just further, elaborating on what Melissa said, normalizing negative emotion is super helpful to kids because they don't attach shame to negative emotions, and they'll understand that it's okay to express and emote and not feel so guilty and ashamed about it.
Totally. And, their generation is just so interesting. They're just the EQ is like off the charts and they're only 5, so I think that hopefully they'll have a better life, We'll see how it goes. I can share a quick link. Somebody asked if there's a network to find Christian counselors who are taking clients. So that's something you can search on Psychology Today, which is like my go-to therapist finder, so you can filter like your insurance and looking for someone of a faith background. And I'm pretty sure that, Kathy, at your organization, there are people that identify as Christian.
No,
just myself. Just you, yeah. Right? Okay, there you go. And I know we have some folks on staff at Resolution Counseling Center too, who are also identify as Christian, and so they're like local, and I don't need to know about it, so they're a resource. But I'm gonna put this in because I think you could pretty much find all of their pages in one place.
Right. There's also another question. How can you overcome mental burnout without quitting your job? How can you overcome mental burnout without quitting your job?
I'm like on a, I have an answer. And I'd love to hear Kathy's thoughts too. So I just got done reading a book that I highly recommend. It's called Designing Your Life. And forgive me if you're my friend or in my small group, and I've been like going on and on about this book. But so it's written by the Stanford Life Design Lab people. One of whom is a Christian and one of whom is an atheist. I was at a talk last summer with the Christian speaker, and it's just a really like fresh approach to dealing with your particularly work, but also just like life issues in general. And basically their whole approach is like to use design thinking. And so that's kind of a buzzword that you might have heard of, but it's basically to like, take stock of like, what is the problem? What are the features that I'm looking for? And then to like redesign like a step forward at a time until you get there. And so their big thing with like the job that you hate is like, instead of resigning, see if you can redesign. There might be a way, like instead of kind of leaving in like leaving like quickly in a way that might hurt your career. Like there are just ways to kind of think about like, okay, can I retool or turn up parts of the job that I really enjoy? Can I like add things to the day that make it better while I'm maybe like building a network and getting to know people and like looking for other opportunities? But it was just like, it was a nice perspective that I just wanted to put out there. And then I think the other thing I would say is like, don't forget that if it's a job that you don't like and you plan to leave and it's like a really big company, you probably have medical leave that you could consider. Like if you're in, if it's like a pretty serious thing where you're like, I'm not able to work and certainly not able to like look for a job. Don't forget about that part, that you can often like take a leave, even if it's for a month or something, to like pursue treatment and wellness and then come back to the job. And obviously there's a lot more that could be said on this, but what are your thoughts, Kathy?
So I am a big advocate of just kind of mastering your signs and mastering your triggers. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, I'll share a couple of my signs for myself that I'm heading towards burnout. I become very irritable. I'll sleep for hours and hours and hours and still wake up completely exhausted. I feel, persistent, like a tight chest, have like difficulty breathing. So what I would encourage clients to do is take inventory of what are the signs that things are not going well and you may be heading towards burnout. And so it's kind of that concept of knowledge is power. So if you know that all these signs and these symptoms are starting to kick in, you can then anticipate and prepare for it. So maybe that would mean, I'm showing all these signs of burnout. Maybe that means that I need to just ask my boss for 2 days off for mental health care, and just take those 2-3 days off and be very conscious of how you're spending that time. You're not checking email, you're not communicating with anyone at work, but whatever meaningful time means to you is how you should spend that time. But I'm definitely a big advocate of mastering your signs and your triggers.
Great. It's 9:21, and I thought it would be great to end with this question. Like, what are some things that give you hope? I know, Melissa, you already shared some in the beginning, just the idea that this is not a hopeless situation. This is, it's possible to get out of it. But what are some other things that give you hope for people who may be going through anxiety or stress? Like what are some things you have for them?
Do you want to go first, Kathy?
Hmm.
Or I can.
So I guess I want to ask a clarifying question. So can you just say a little bit more, Craig, about what that might mean?
Yeah, what gives you hope for people who are, like, what are some things people can hope for even now as they may be struggling through anxiety and stress. So like one thing Melissa did say is that there is a way out, right? You could kind of reset. You can, it's possible, like this is not a never-ending story where you're struggling through anxiety for the rest of your life. Like there is a way out. Are there other things like that you're hopeful about for people who may be experiencing anxiety?
I mean, I think I would just kind of piggyback and elaborate off of that. I mean, anxiety is one of those diagnoses that it's likely not forever, and it's treatable, very manageable, as long as you are motivated to, right? So, I have had in the past and even presently a lot of clients that are so motivated to get their anxiety under control. And as long as they're willing to put in the work, take feedback, do homework, do the exercises, most clients do report a significant improvement. I know Melissa kind of spoke on the medication. I've had plenty of clients that take the anxiety medication as needed or regularly, and in conjunction with therapy. There are a lot of clients that have graduated from therapy, and they know that they're welcome to come back, but they don't. And I'm hoping that they're doing okay. So, anxiety does not have to be a forever thing at all.
Definitely. No, I would strongly echo that I think anxiety is like the most treatable thing that the most of us are dealing with. And so it's kind of great that it's like this common problem that is so treatable. I think I would also just sort of remind us of like two other parts of it that, we go through seasons, so like if you have like kind of a triple thing going on where like your parents need a lot of extra help and you've got young kids and your job is busy, like you might just be more stressed out for a couple of years, but that's not the rest of your life, so you can like take extra good care of yourself now. But if that's just not happening, like it's kind of okay. You might just have a couple of years where you're a little more like, okay, I need to remember this will pass. And then it does pass. It's like a fascinating thing that even in a marriage, right, where you have two people like kind of joined together to create certain problems, 30% of them just disappear over time, even if you're not working on them. And it's just because circumstances change. And so there's always that aspect of hope that like, like a thing that's a problem sometimes is just less stressful in a few years, even if you're not personally able to do very much about it. And then I think I would certainly just echo what Kathy said, that like, this is something that you can do so much about. There's like so many resources, so many things to try. And I guess I just want to share from my own life. This is certainly something that I have dealt a lot with. And I like, it's almost like every year or two, I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure it out again because, it's sort of come back or something. But something I'm trying in this season is like, what if I just met with a personal trainer and actually did the workouts that I sometimes just tend to fall off from for a couple of months? Because particularly for me, like vigorous exercise, like getting my caffeine levels down, like there's just so many physical things that make a big change. And like, it just to me is like a sort of known truth that like, if I'm really putting in the effort, like I can sleep pretty well, I can be at like a pretty normal level of stress. And if I don't do that, then it's like, there's just like a lot there. And so it feels like something we have control over, if that makes sense. And I think that's really hopeful. And then I would just remember like we have a spiritual toolbox too, which so many people is not part of their life. And I just think like anytime that I sit down with God in a journal and a cup of coffee, like I just emerge with a really different perspective. And it just always sort of reminds me like that's there every day. Like I could be engaging with that almost every time that I have a high amount of stress. And so just thinking about that habit and knowing that that's a hope that's out there too.
That's good. Thanks so much, Kathy and Melissa, for really sharing your thoughts. This is super helpful. And even as Melissa reminded us, which I was actually going to say, like, yeah, we have something already available for us, and we can come before God. We can cast our cares, our anxieties before Him. And two, I think part of even being part of a church is recognizing that there are people within our church, your church, or your community that would love to come around you to support you, help you, pray with you. So please don't be shy or feel ashamed of it, or hide because of it, but reach out to community so that we community can come around and support you, and whatever you may be going through. I think there is a last slide with resources. I think.
Oh, right. Good point. Here you go.
So you can check out.
There was like 1 or 2 other books. Are you going to send out an email later, Craig?
I can
Or like
send
a
out an
follow-up
email.
or something.
Yeah,
There was a couple more that I didn't get to add in, but that I could suggest.
Yep. Same. Yep. Great. So here are some resources for you to use, and I'll send this out over email and with more resources, as Melissa just said. But again, just thank you for joining us for this. And again, a quick reminder, if you need prayer, our prayer team is here to support you. We meet every month for prayer. So I definitely want to invite you to come for those times, because it is helpful. It is needed to come together corporately for prayer. And again, if you want personal time, personal prayer, reach out to our team. You can, I think, I don't want to botch it, but I'll send an email. I can't remember the email, if it's pray at Hope Jersey City or prayer at Hope Jersey, I don't know what it is, but I'll send it to you later over email. But again, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Melissa. Yes, prayer at Hope Jersey City. Thank you, Kristen.org. And would you guys please share your thanks to Kathy and Melissa and Dara, who is not here, too, over chat. Just thank you guys so much for spending so much time and preparing this and sharing with us and helping us become better human beings, healthier human beings. We appreciate you. Guys, thank you again.
Good night.
Good night. See you
Hopefully
on Sunday.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And soon. It's coming.
Exactly.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.